I'm Casey Gray, and I've been doing my in-service for linguistics at West High School. Um, I'm a little different because I've been doing mine in a culinary arts classroom because that's what I plan on teaching in the future. I have my culinary arts degree, or my AS, I should say, in it, so I'm going down that track. Um, what kind of makes it a little different is that it's not a core curriculum subject. So the standards in place within the classroom, be it the same because it's in the same school, is not necessarily as well defined, which kind of makes it interesting between the dynamics of the teacher and the student. Um, the reason why that a culinary classroom is different is that there's no area within it that specifically says that you have to go over language. So there's no writing requirements and there's no presentation requirements like there are in other curriculums. So with that being said, I work with Judy Davis. She has her ESL endorsement as well, and she's been working with at-risk students for about 25 years. Most of it's been up in Montana, and it's been the past 10 years at West High. Um, when I was speaking to her, the dynamics within the classroom are interesting because there's around 75 different languages spoken just at West High School. This diversity within there makes it rather difficult for teachers to hit every single student. Now, the main population is going to be native English speakers and Spanish speakers, predominantly from Mexico at West High School. There's been an increase in refugees over the years, and another big population is Islander students, which, depending on where they're from, they speak a different language. Having all that within one classroom not distracts, but makes it difficult as a teacher when you have 30 plus students in a classroom to teach them all at once on a fair playing field. West High does have good resources for the students, but not for all of them. So the upper level English language learners don't have as much resources available to them as do the lower level English language learners. Um, the low level students have specified classes in which they go to learn English, but the higher level students don't have that resource. Um, if they score high enough on a test, then they test out of the class. Um, and a lot of those are the students who either grew up here because they're from an immigrant family or were born here, so they've grown up with dual languages. The students who grew up with two languages still learn Spanish first and English second. Um, the interesting thing about that is they've had exposure to the language almost as much as an English or a native English speaker, but still have some of the same problems as an English language learner um, due to their family life and their exposure as a toddler being from predominantly Spanish speaking. One of the more interesting things that I've seen the English language learners do is falls under semantics and code switching. So code switching is when a student will switch between languages, be it because they don't know the word in the language they're using, or because they switch between the two and don't necessarily realize they're doing it. With this Spanish speaking kids in the class, it is very common for them to say something like, go grab the pollo, which in English would be, go grab the chicken. So the switching is between the word chicken and pollo. Little slips like that happen constantly, even though pollo is a very common word within the classroom, even with the native English speakers. There's a slight adoption of Spanish within the classroom I've been observing. Just like little phrases like pollo seem to be more common than chicken. It's interesting to see the dynamics between the students and how they work together between the English language learners and the native English speakers, because there's almost a building or a cooperative working together between the two because the class is heavily group based and you have to be able to communicate. There is a huge variation between where the English language learners are within their language skills, and the code switching is a very common thing that I saw within the classroom. So another thing that I saw within the classroom falls under the syntax label, and when it comes to negatives within the language. It is common to see double negatives within Spanish, whereas in English, single negatives are more normal. You'd hear kids say things like, I know want nothing, which in English is I don't want anything. So the no and nothing is where the double negative lies and shows that the difference between English and Spanish is apparent. The students have a hard time differing between their language and the English language, and they do direct translations instead of realistic translations. Another syntactical problem I saw was word ordering. So, like, one kid would say, student's name went to the store, bought vegetables. Where a native English speaker would say, Jill went to the store and bought vegetables, or brought back vegetables, with it, whichever one. That shows kind of the difference in the structure of the languages and how the translation between the two works within the student's head. Another problem that I've seen within the classroom falls under the label of morphology, especially with past tense words. Some of the things I've heard is like, we wait for car instead of we waited for the car, or another phrase that I've heard is I not see the movie instead of I did not see the movie. Spanish has a different structure with past tense than English does, so the students are doing a direct translation instead of a realistic translation between the two languages. The classroom that I have been observing is not directly an ESL class, and therefore is not direct ESL instruction. I have seen Judy correct students in the classroom in ways that they speak, like they went to the store, bought vegetables. She actually corrected the students, like they went to the store and bought vegetables. Just little interactions like that. The interesting part is that with food, you actually have a whole different set of terminology that is heavily based in French. Some of the students who know your Romance languages pick up on the French terminology quicker than some of the native English speakers. So there's actually kind of a weird dynamic that goes on between the students, that some of the students who struggle in one area actually end up doing better with the terminology than the native English speakers. Judy will actually break kids into groups and have them do the terminology in the group, so then the ones who are strong can help the ones who are weaker. From what I've seen, this has actually been a decent way of getting the students to learn the terminology and kind of helps break down the cliques that are within the classroom. I'd like to see Judy do more of this within the classroom, but when she does do it, it has been very successful.